"Buy me, cowboy. I will make sure you are satisfied," the Apache woman on sale said. That sentence left her mouth with a quietness that bothered everyone who heard it, not because it promised joy, but because it showed power. And when she said, "Buy me, cowboy, I will make sure you are satisfied," the street became very quiet, where even the toughest man felt something bad moving underneath. Her name was Alara, though the crowd did not know it and had not cared to ask, and the rope tied above her wrist was hot against skin that had once known only open fields and paths she chose. She stood straight against the post, shoulders back, chin up, refusing to let shame change how she stood, because she understood that respect was the last thing they had not yet taken. Around her, faces made a circle of judging and wanting, some openly mean, some quietly involved, and she knew that the quiet ones were often the worst because their silence helped the system more strongly than force ever could. The betrayer spoke loudly, making her seem more valuable in rude ways, explaining following orders as if it were a good thing, not a theft. But his voice became unimportant. As Ilara looked closely at the one man who had stepped forward differently, the cowboy held money in his hand, yet his eyes did not quickly look at her body the way she had learned to expect. Instead, they met hers for a moment and then stayed, not with wanting, but with confusion, as if something about her being there stopped a story he had believed his whole life. That moment of stopping was small, but Ilara had learned that staying alive often relied on using small chances before they disappeared. She did not say her words again or make them gentler, because repeating them would have turned a smart plan into a show, and she was done acting out sadness for fun. The crowd grew restless, eager for the problem to be fixed, eager to see power show itself in usual ways, and she knew that time was pushing her from all sides. Her arms hurt, her shoulders burned, yet she stayed still, keeping herself steady with breathing and memories, reminding herself that holding on was not the same as giving up. When the cowboy finally spoke, his question did not fit the market, and that alone changed the feeling of the moment because it hinted at a choice where none was supposed to be. The trader made a rude sound, ignoring the stop, but the sound had less force than before, as if the certainty of owning her had already begun to weaken. Coins fell on the ground instead of a waiting hand, and the metal sound rang longer than it should have, showing that something had gone wrong for those who depended on cruelty running easily. The rope was cut rather than untied, falling away in torn pieces, and pain rushed back into Alara's arms, sharp and strong, reminding her that she still had her body fully. She stepped down without shaking, refusing to fall or hold on, because weakness, even real weakness, would have been used as proof of their power. The cowboy did not touch her, did not show her where to step, and as they moved away together, the street watched with an uncomfortable feeling that felt like fear, because what they were seeing did not end cleanly. Ilara could feel eyes on her back, could sense the stories already starting, some angry, some mocking, some changed beyond recognition. And she understood that staying alive now needed more than just leaving. She walked next to the cowboy, not behind him, watching each step, each silence, knowing that freedom offered by one man could still be threatened by many others. She did not trust him, not yet, but she noticed something new in the way he moved, a calmness that suggested being aware rather than being in control. As the noise of the town quieted behind them, Ilara focused on what lay ahead, not as a hope of safety, but as a series of decisions she would have to make with care and without false hopes. The words she had spoken at the post still sounded in her mind, not as shame, but as proof that words themselves could be used as a weapon, and she knew that whatever came next would need the same exactness. The story had not paused or reset, it had simply moved location, carrying with it the importance of what had been said out loud and the results that could not be changed. The road stretched forward without fuss, and Ilara liked that, because big departures often carried the same problems as big arrivals, and she had learned that real freedom rarely made a big announcement. The space between her and the cowboy remained on purpose as they moved, not stiff with not trusting, but balanced with knowing, a space shaped by shared calmness rather than fear. She saw how he changed his speed to match hers without saying anything, how he kept his hands where she could see them, how he never tried to fill the silence with comforting words. That would have been more for his ease than hers. Silence in this way felt true. It allowed Ilara to listen to her own thoughts as they rearranged themselves after being held captive, getting rid of habits built for survival inside cages, and learning again how to exist without always figuring out danger. When Elias finally spoke his name, he did so simply, as if offering a fact instead of a name to be liked or forgiven. And she accepted it with a nod, not returning the action right away, because trust, like freedom, was something she preferred to give out slowly. As they traveled, talking happened in small pieces, never forced, showing parts of lives shaped by different kinds of harsh treatment. Ilara spoke of what she lost without making it sound better, not as a request for pity, but as background, explaining how being held captive trained following orders into the muscles and turned silence into protection. She explained how words could be used as tools, how the sentence she had spoken at the post was never meant to ask for ownership, but to reveal it, to force the listener to look at their own want and decide whether they would act on it. Elias listened without stopping her, without trying to make her experiences softer or place himself as the most important part of them. And that calmness mattered because it allowed her to remain the writer of her own story, rather than a person rewritten through his feelings of right and wrong. In return, he spoke of agreements made in quieter ways, of following rules that protected him while hurting others, of moments where doing nothing had felt easier than choosing to cause trouble. He did not ask for forgiveness, and she did not give it, because understanding did not require forgiveness to be useful. As the place changed into an area where paths met and people went through without staying, Ilara felt the stress she had carried begin to lessen, not because danger was gone, but because choice had come back. Elias stopped there, not in a dramatic way, but with a kind of stillness that marked purpose, and told her she could go wherever she wanted, that the money he had spent bought nothing from her and never would. There were no rules hidden beneath his words, no unsaid hopes, and the clearness of that moment felt important because freedom given without a show left no room for acting. Ilara looked at him, not to test if he was honest, but to confirm he was the same, and when she found it, she took the moment as complete. She gave him her name, then, not as thanks, but as showing she knew him, taking it back openly and without fear of being stolen. She told him that what he had done was important only if it continued to guide his choices, that stories like hers did not need saving, but needed careful sharing, because changing the truth was another form of harm. Then she turned away, choosing her path with the same care she had used to survive captivity, stepping forward without looking behind her, trusting her decision enough not to seek comfort. As she joined the movement of others, her presence did not disappear. It spread out, carried forward in how she stood, in her voice, in the quiet certainty of someone who had taken back control and planned to use it. Elias watched her go and felt the weight of the meeting settle into him, not as pride or guilt, but as responsibility. He understood that remaining silent afterward would make him involved again, that the trouble he had caused would mean nothing if it ended with that single action. In the days that followed, he told the story carefully, taking away the show, refusing to let it become fun or a myth, showing it instead as a moment where a woman refused to break and forced a system to wait. He did not place himself at the center, did not make his part seem too important, and those who listened found themselves bothered not by shock, but by seeing themselves. The story stayed because it did not teach or order, it asked for thought, asking listeners to check their own silences and the comfort they took in staying distant. Ilara continued forward, not as a symbol stuck in one act of standing up, but as a living force shaped by purpose, carrying her experience not as a hurt to be shown, but as knowledge to be used. She built her life on purpose, choosing helpers with care, speaking when it mattered, not saying anything when it did not, and understanding that staying alive alone was not the goal if it did not lead to being independent. The story finished not with a solution, but with going on, living through those who chose to stay involved, with stories that respected intelligence and bravery. Stories that did not flatter the listener, but trusted them to pay attention, to come back, and to carry on what they had been given without being asked.